A life without suffering is a life without happiness. You may be asking, how, Chris? How could this be true? But I promise you, from when I was living this hedonistic lifestyle where I was focused only on pleasure, focused only on short-term happiness, and then I transitioned to focus on making my life the most out of the time I have here and pursuing things that contain suffering, I can tell you there is a stark difference. In today's video, we're going to understand the relationship between suffering and happiness. We're going to talk about the suffering as a catalyst for personal growth. And then the final point, we're going to talk about some personal stories that'll tie it all home for you so you can understand why suffering is actually necessary for happiness. With that being said, the first piece is suffering and the relationship between happiness. The thing is that it takes a certain amount of suffering to understand and appreciate joy. The contrast actually enhances the joy that you feel from happiness. Happiness will be felt more deeply when you have understood hardship. For example, if you've ever had a really hard workout, how good does that water taste after? If you've never had a hard workout, if you've never been thirsty, you can never appreciate the taste for water. It's the same thing when you've had a really hard day and you sit down and how good it feels to sit down. If you've just been sitting your whole life, you can never appreciate that. And it's the same thing for joy and happiness. Without hardship, without stress, without sadness, you can never appreciate the joy that is truly there and feeling that deeply. So it's important that you actually allow yourself to feel sadness, to feel happiness, to feel anger, stuff like that. People so often, at least what I did in the past and what I've noticed, is that people so often try to feel this short-term state happiness. They just want to be happy all the time. And the thing is, if you were to be that way, you could never understand how great joy and happiness feels without experiencing all of those emotions. On top of that, it gives you a true appreciation of happiness. Suffering helps us appreciate the good by being grateful for success and the good times. It's like if you were to be a business owner and if you were just to have everything given to you, if you were to have a $10 million a year business given to you, it would not feel near as good as if you were to work for it. And I can attest to that. I don't have a $10 million a year business, but what I do have is I've had some coaching clients, and I can tell you the work I've had to put in to be able to get those coaching clients. Number one, makes me appreciate them that much more, but number two, makes it feel that much better that I have them. And it's the same thing for happiness. When you're able to appreciate your happiness because you've been sad, because you've been through those hard times, I can tell you, it gives you a true appreciation for it. And one more thing between the relationship with suffering and happiness is emotional resilience. By feeling suffering, by going through hard times, it will help build you up as a person. And if you were to think about, if you wanted to have all the traits of a great person, someone who can handle adversity, handle stress, it wouldn't be an easy life. They would have to experience the stress and go through those things to then have those characteristics. And I'd imagine you being your visualization of your 5-year self. Who you see yourself as in 5 years, 10 years is probably a greater version of yourself now. But to get there, I promise you the only way to get there is going to be to suffer. And I'm not talking about suffering in terms of breaking your leg. I'm talking about the suffering where it's something that, you're like, I don't really want to do this action, like going to the gym, or sending the DMs you don't want to send, or starting the business you don't want to start, or stepping up in the relationship and being the best partner you can be. I'm talking about that kind of suffering. And when you can lean into that suffering, I promise you it'll build the emotional resilience, and you'll start to build the traits and build the skills that you want to have in your 5-year visualization of yourself. So that's the relationship between suffering and happiness. The second point is suffering as a catalyst for personal growth. I can personally attest that the times that I've suffered the most are the times when I have grown the most. There was an example just a year ago where I lost a coaching client or just over some stuff, and it really showed me what I needed to do to step up as a coach and be a better coach. And now I have those traits that make me that much better as a person and that much better as a coach. And even a bigger example in my life is when I was 17 and I went to the inpatient hospital for some pretty serious mental health stuff. That was a huge point of suffering in my life, but what it did is it showed me and helped me grow as a person, what changes I need to make. And one of the biggest changes I made is going from victim to victor mindset. And instead of just seeing my life as happening to me and being in this reactionary state, going to victor mindset where I am going to happen to life. I am going to impose my will on life. And so that is some of the biggest personal growth I've had, is when I was suffering the most. So strength through adversity. And one other thing is that learning compassion and empathy. You will develop a certain amount of empathy once you suffer. It's like, I have so much more appreciation for business owners that have made it, because me, on the come up as a business owner, I can tell you how hard it is and how much harder that it's been than I thought it was going to be. But now I have so much empathy and so much compassion for those business owners out there doing the same thing. Same thing when I was in the hospital. I still have that now, that appreciation, that empathy for those who have been there, and I am now better equipped to help people that have experienced that. So suffering will help you develop empathy and compassion, and it can help you understand and support others. And the most important point with personal growth and suffering is that often our suffering becomes our purpose. And this is 100% true in my life. All of the suffering that I faced up to this point has now become my purpose. It has now become what I want to help others with, and I guarantee it will continue that way for the entirety of my life. It builds my character and it builds my purpose. Often what we go through often becomes our purpose. So for me, going to the hospital is now my purpose, to help 16 to 18-year-olds struggling with the victim mindset, to help them go from victim to victor so they can control their life and live a life on their terms. So what's the suffering in your life that becomes your purpose, becomes and builds your character? Comment below if you'd like. You can share them. It'd be awesome to hear what suffering you're going to go through that 3 years from now will become your purpose. The third and the final piece is happiness derived from meaning and purpose. This builds off the last point, but when you have meaningful challenges in your life, it allows you to prove yourself to yourself. And that's one of my favorite things. Earlier today, I was breaking down excellence with my therapist. And what does that mean? Why do I love to win? And I think it's because it's making the most out of my life. I want to give 100% in everything that I do, and that gives me a lot of joy doing that. And through challenges, and when I can have a big new boss to slay or monster, like if you think about it like playing a video game, you go from a level 1 boss to a level 2 boss to a level 3 boss, and you just want to continue to slay bigger and bigger enemies. And for me, I love doing that. And it's through that challenge, through that suffering, when I'm able to prove myself to myself that I can win, that I can do this. That suffering gives me immense joy and immense happiness, and it makes me feel like I'm making the most out of my life, which is my goal in my life, is to make the most out of my life and take advantage of the time that I have here. One final point is that through suffering, you will find joy in small moments. Recently, I've been talking about this in the last few videos, that I burnt out a little bit. I burnt out for 2 or 3 weeks. I was really struggling with some stuff, and it really showed me joy in small moments. One of my favorite moments is I was at Costco, sitting in the break room with one of my friends, and my friend's like, "How you been, man?" And he like really asked me, he's like, "How have you been?" And that was really meaningful to me. Usually everybody asks you at least once a day, "How have you been?" "You good," whatever. And when someone really asked me how I was, I almost got emotional. I mean, I almost did break down, start crying, because I was, really dealing with some tough burnout stuff. But when he asked me that question, now I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. Even thinking about it now, I get this warm feeling inside that he took the time out of his day to really ask me how I was, and it gave me a good outlet to share how I was feeling. And so suffering will show you and give you those appreciation, those smaller moments. So that's a life without suffering is a life without happiness, and that's at least my opinion on it. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Richardson. My one thing in life right now is to help 16 to 18-year-olds who feel like they're suffering in not a good way, but turn that suffering into a good suffering to help build the skills and help them conquer their dreams. And I hope I could share this with you guys, and this content is not just for 16 to 18-year-olds, but that's as a coach who I'm helping. If you like this content, please comment what you like, and I will make more of these videos.